Hey guys, Sandy here, and today I am going to make some artist trading cards. Now, this is going to be a new thing for me. I am hoping that I'm going to be able to put them on my scrapbook layout, so we'll see how that turns out. I'm using 2 stamp sets from Brutus Monroe. This one is called Blooming Bicycle. It's from the April box. It is still available in the shop, and this one is called Feathered Friends. This is also available in the shop, and it is on sale at the time of me making this video. So I will have the links down below. I also grabbed 2 stencils, so let's see what I can do. All right, to get started, I just take some of my Aqua pigments, and I'm going to put them into this super cute Mickey head palette. Now I have sprayed some water down on my Not Your Mama's cardstock, and I also sprayed some water onto the mixed media mat. I'm using a big fluffy brush just to mix around the colors in blue and teal, and I'm using a mixture of regular aqua pigments, sparkle aqua pigments, and creamy aqua pigments, and I will have links down below so that you can check those out. Now for this one, what I decided to do was really put some water on my Not Your Mama's cardstock and then just drop the aqua pigments down onto them directly and let that dry. Now I had a 4th card cut out into the artist trading card size, and I just decided to go ahead and sop up all of that aqua pigment goodness so I wouldn't waste any of it. Here I'm using the lace stencil, and as you can see, I'm using the alabaster pigment ink, and I'm just making sure that the lace kind of goes through the stencil and you get some of that awesome lace detail. For this one, I'm taking the Sunburst Stencil, and again, I'm using the alabaster pigment ink to just put that down. I decided to use my blending brush, or my blending tool rather, and just go ahead and add in the center of kind of that sunburst as well, because in the stencil it is not. For this one, I decided to grab some of the clouds, and I thought, you know what, instead of having the card go vertically, I'm going to mix it up and make it go horizontally. Again, I'm using that alabaster pigment ink just because it is a great white ink that shows up pretty well on colored backgrounds, and it's not something I really have to worry about. I'm going to use the lace again on one of the blue backgrounds. This time, instead of using white ink, I'm going to use black ink, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm smushing the ink down through the stencil so that I get a good impression, and I really like the way that looks. Like I'm pretty pleased with it. So I grabbed my stamp set, and remember this one is on sale right now. So I'm going to go ahead and use my anti-static powder tool, put the bird cage down in my Misty stamp positioner, and just go ahead and use the clear embossing ink. I mean, on top of that, I add the ultra fine embossing powder in Raven, and it really does a fantastic job at sticking down onto the embossed lines. This stamp is kind of a I want to almost say a delicate stamp because it has such thin lines on the bird cage. So it looks awesome. And I really just like the way that it sits on top of the inked kind of lacy stencil. I think that that is something that looks pretty good. So we're pulling back out the cloud one, and I'm adding the bike stencil or the bike stamp here in the Raven ink, and then good thing I'm using the Misty because I can swap that thing down twice and really get a nice deep darker image. I decide that something has to go here, and what better thing to go here than a bird. I really like this cute little guy, so I stamp him, and I make sure that he is darker than the lace because I want him to stand out a little bit. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is my first time doing artist trading cards, and I really didn't know if they were supposed to be super lumpy, if they could have popped up dimension, because if I were to do these again and to treat them more as embellishments for my scrapbooking and less like trading cards, I would have cut out that bird and popped him up on some foam squares, maybe clear embossed the entire thing, just to give him a little bit of a different texture and a different look. Now this one with the Sunburst, I decide to heat emboss this kind of branch with leaves on it, and I really like the way this one turned out. It is probably my favorite one. I am dipping my paintbrush directly into the Aqua pigments one more time. I'm not watering them down whatsoever. I want kind of strong, bold colors on my image. I definitely want it to feel like it's popping off the card, even though it is a flat image, except for the little bit of raised embossing that there is. So I am just making sure to add in a good amount of pigment with that brush. And then there you saw my little cheat. So when I, this is laziness, really is what it is. But what I do, if I have a brush like this and I'm just using some watercolor, what I'll do is I'll use my spray bottle to spray off the brush into a paper towel instead of actually getting an entire water cup. And like I said, that's laziness, but it works. So here I am just adding some color into the bird. I use the blue aqua pigment, and then I go ahead and add the creamy one just to give a little bit of a different shade to certain parts of the bird. So this little part of his head, and then the tail and some little lines on his belly, just to kind of give him a little bit of extra oomph. Now I decide that I need to ink around the edges of these things, so I just go ahead and grab my ink blending tool that has the Raven embossing ink on it, and or not embossing ink, people, just regular old ink. And I go ahead and go around the edges. Now this Not Your Mama's cardstock is pretty strong, so I do end up kind of tearing apart my ink blending tool. But the foam is kind of old. It's been around for a little while, so it was probably time to replace it anyway. But just as a heads up, the Not Your Mama's cardstock really is a strong, thick cardstock, and just be prepared for it to kind of tear into the foam a little bit, which is not a big deal. Now I am pulling out the little sentiments from the stamps and just trying to figure out where exactly I want them. Now this is the Life is a Journey sentiment from the Bloomin' Bicycles, and I really don't have a problem cutting the sentiment in half that way, because now I can use it two ways. I can use it like this with it stacked, or I can just like put it back together and it could be one large long sentiment. So here I am, I'm looking at these, I'm trying to figure out if that's where I want them to go, and it surely is. So instead of my stamp positioner tool, I just grab an acrylic block, and I'm just going to go ahead and stamp these right on. So I'm making sure that I have inked up my stamps a good amount so that I won't have to double stamp, because everyone knows that it is, or maybe it's not for you, but it's difficult for me to double stamp with an acrylic block because you have to make sure everything is completely lined up so you don't get like double lines, and you know, we don't want the double lines. Now I went ahead and grabbed the floral paper here, and I can't remember if this is Farmhouse Florals or the other floral paper pad, but don't worry, I will have it linked down below for you. So I went ahead and fussy cut out the flower, and now I'm just going to use some matte gel medium to adhere this to the bird cage. And then I'm going to place on top of the floral this banner that I stamped that says "Thinking of You." And I'm just going to put matte gel medium over the entire top of the artist trading card. Now I did this for two reasons. One, because I didn't want any of the edges of the papers that were on top to kind of peel up off the card. And two is when I went to Junkie Fest, we were given an artist trading coin, and it had Mod Podge or something like a matte gel medium or something over the top of it. So I thought maybe that you were supposed to do that. Like I said, this is my first time making artist trading cards, so I'm kind of winging it with what I'm doing. So if you are watching this and you're like, oh, Sandy, you shouldn't have done that, or oh, you should have done something differently, lay it on me, guys, because I am a sponge ready to learn. I had a lot of fun with these. I ended up loving 3 out of 4 of them, which isn't bad for your first time trying something. So I will definitely do these again. This isn't something where it's going to be like a one and done. I'm never going to try this again, because 75% of what I made, I enjoyed. So that's good. So we have the cards now. I'm just going to clean off this a little bit. I do run my heat tool over them. It doesn't take them long to dry whatsoever, but I do know I want to add a little bit of pen work. I want to add some white gel pen and also some black pen. So I'm just going to go ahead and dry those off. And I'm drying both sides of them just in case, you know, there's a bunch of wetness that went through. So now I have these 4. First, I'm going to take a pencil and kind of shade in under the floral and under the thinking of you. Now I am using a watercolor pencil to do this, and I thought if I added water, it would give it a little bit more of a shadow instead of kind of a line of pencil. And it does. I don't necessarily know if this step was truly needed. I'm not really sure if you can really see a lot of shadow and texture and dimension from it, but I did do it, and I figured I would leave it in for you guys to see. So I'm just taking a ruler to mark out a thin line here around the edge of this one, and I'm just using my pen to randomly fill in little squares. So this is something that I just think like finishes off the edge of this card really, really well. I truly enjoyed doing this. I decided not to do this on any of the other cards because I wanted to try different things. Since it's the first time doing them, I just wanted to try different techniques and see what I could come up with. So we're going to go ahead and finish off the border on that. Now I am just using my regular black Muji pen here. No special pen whatsoever. It colored in and wrote in pretty good on top of the matte gel medium. Now this is the card that I really wasn't happy with, you guys. It doesn't even make the final photos because I really just I wasn't pleased with it. I felt like I could have done something better. I like the outline that I went ahead and created. I kind of made a fluid line all the way around 3 sides of the card and just filled it in with black. And I think if this was more of an abstract card and less of a this is a bicycle within the clouds card, it would have looked better. I thought that the bicycle within the clouds was enough whimsy to make this happen, but I don't think it was. I think that the bicycle is a little bit too straight and linear, and this is a bicycle in your face type thing to really get what I was doing. But I do like kind of the wonky kind of fill in bits around this card, just not for this particular card. Like I wish I would have done it on something else, or maybe went ahead and figured out something else to put around the border. I really struggled with this one to add something to it because I really wanted to put actual flowers where all the flowers are drawn in on that stamp. But again, I'm not exactly sure how artist trading cards are supposed to work. Like how lumpy and bumpy are they supposed to be, or can they be? Or is this kind of one of those things where it's up to interpretation and it's a you do you type thing? I just don't know. Now here on this card, I am taking a white gel pen and I am just adding in some details with my pen where I am going around and just kind of tracing loosely over top the shape of the lace. So it is a little bit of an awkward shape thing to do, but we're making it work. And I really like the black, white, and the blue together. It's a color combo that makes me happy. I'm a big fan of black and white with pops of color anyway, so it just makes my little heart so happy. So I'm just doodling a little bit and liking the way that that looks. I also decided to doodle a little bit on the bird as well, just because I felt like, as much as I said I wanted to pop him off the page, I felt like he was almost away from the page. He wasn't a part of the page, if that makes sense. So I wanted to go ahead and change that out. Now I added some white gel pen on my bird cage as well. I just did a little bit of a line on some of the cage and then kind of like a messy border around the card, kind of like I do on my scrapbook pages. And then I went ahead and grabbed this card, and I felt like the sunburst was really kind of fading into the background and you really didn't see it a whole lot. And I definitely wanted you to be able to see that sunburst. So I went ahead and added some lines with the white gel pen, and I'm just filling those in. And I like the way that that looks. So I do believe that that is going to do it, you guys. I didn't like that one, so that one like kind of went off to the edge. And this, I added some dots because I thought that that was cool. Again, I like the border. I like what happened here. I just don't like it for this particular card. So here are the 3 that I ended up with, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to me down below. Tell me about your experience with artist trading cards and how you handle them. And I will see you guys again real soon for another video.